Hey, welcome to the show, everybody. Welcome to the Council on Future Conflicts, episode 504. Talking about Chinese investments, and not the kind of investments you're thinking of, and the war against the cartel. Um, guys, once I started seeing all these kind of here's exactly how the war against the cartel should go kind of articles, I'm like, yeah, they're definitely prepping the battlefield for that. So we'll dig into that and we'll kind of give our take. We'll look at what they think is going to happen with that war, and we'll give you our take. Going back to China, when we think of investments, we think of like your 401k, or we think of like things that you want to use for the future. But no, in this case, we're talking about their heavy metal investments, i.e., the military industrial complex in China. So we'll be talking about some of their capabilities and things like that. Joe, eventful weekend. It was Easter. I hope you had a good Easter.
I did. There's really no way possible to have a bad Easter when you, instead of focusing on the commercial aspects, you focus on the real aspects. But I put out a tweet over the weekend, and I'm actually writing a whole story on the Lexington and Concord thing. But the one I put out over the weekend was that I put out on Sunday was Jesus was a dissident. His people thought they were going to overthrow the government. So did the Romans, and so they killed him for it. And there is a lesson to be learned there. Right.
Yeah.
So cool weekend, good weekend. I do find our last odds and then interesting that it happened over the weekend. And we'll talk about that when we get to it.
Yep.
But lots of good stuff happened over the weekend. I got some range time in. We had a good time. Lots of fun stuff.
Yeah, very good. Watcher, how you doing, brother?
Oh, doing good. Just enjoying life.
You don't sound like it. I'm not gonna lie. You know.
Oh, what do you mean?
I know it's early, but you just sound kind of down.
Oh, I've got some very large bills to pay and some other stuff, but no, it's good.
This is probably the only week in which I'm not sympathetic to that because I just paid our favorite Uncle Sam a 5-figure check. So I'm not. Yeah.
Yeah, that sucks, man. No other way to emphasize the Texas theft.
Actually, no. This year it was only 4 digits, not 5. I stand corrected. So,
Joe, I wish you had that problem.
Yeah,
that would be a good problem. I hate to say it, but paying higher tax bills is generally a good problem to have.
Well, Matt's last year was 6, so.
Well,
I don't have Matt's problem.
Matt's doing well.
Matt is doing very well. And rumor has it, you got to keep it on the DL, but there may be yet another expansion to the Brush Beater Training Center in North Carolina. So.
Yeah, that sounds like it's too spicy to talk about on air. So let's watch ourselves there.
It's going to be good. I'll just say that.
I mean, it's like every time I hear about that guy, he's doing something new and more awesome. So, and the last new and awesome thing that Matt did was sponsor this program. So, that we'll hit that sponsorship movement here. Not yet, guys. Let's just dive right into the odds and ends, shall we? This is Joe. You're usually the guy who kind of fills me in on this kind of stuff. So I want to run this one by you and tell me what you think. Okay. Conspiracy theory is being pushed by the left that claims that something really big is going to happen today. Most people on the right have no idea just how crazed many people on the left have become. Right now, a conspiracy theory claims that President Trump is preparing to declare martial law. I mean, so this is the Blue Anon stuff. I mean, it's...
Yeah, this is the big one. Yet today will come and go and nothing will happen. For the record, on Saturday, several of them went online and proclaimed how they were going to be physically removing Donald Trump from office on Saturday. I'm not sure. Did that actually go down? Is he?
How did that? I mean, According to the conspiracy theory report, will be submitted to President Trump on April 20th, which will recommend that he should invoke the Insurrection Act to help deal with the border crisis. That would allow the U.S. troops to help secure the border, but many leftists are convinced that President Trump will also use U.S. troops to round up political activists and send them to prisons in El Salvador.
Never mind that that's completely unconstitutional. The reason why he's able to do it with illegal aliens is they're illegal aliens. It just says they have to be deported. It doesn't say to where, right? And it's the same thing we did with unlawful enemy combatants from Guantanamo Bay. We released them to third-party countries that had nothing to do with them, which was actually magnanimous because them being unlawful combatants, we could have just killed them and it would have been perfectly legal. But we didn't. So crazy.
Yeah, I'll be honest with you. I am aware of the size of the U.S. military, and let me tell you, I don't think we couldn't handle doing that to one full state, much less the whole damn country.
Correct. There are not enough active duty troops to secure the entire country.
I mean, especially if you're talking about like a state like California or something. I don't know. I think it's funny when the conspiracy theorists on our side come up with crazy, like the whole Q thing was really kind of funny to me. Especially like I didn't even really know what Q was until I was in Jordan for the something lion exercise in Jordan, and QAnon people started making a big deal about us being in Jordan doing combat operations inside Jordan to take down enemies. I was like, no, that's not what's happening. I'm here on the ground. I see what's happening. And none of these things that they're talking about are happening. And I was just kind of like, okay, I guess what they're just doing is like they're trying to paint outside the numbers deliberately, right? They take what's already there and just make something new up about it. And as long as they can keep the plate spinning, they won't fall off. So we do it on our side, and it looks like the left is just as broken on their side too. Let's see. QAnon or flat earthers. Okay. Well, let's see what else we got going on in the chat here. By the way, welcome chat. You guys are killing it as always. I know our chat's doing good when I can't keep up with it. When I look for something that's already gone. Wait, what? CFC was on time. Hey, I mean, I don't know why they're giving a shit about that. Joe.
That's hurtful, Chris. That's hurtful.
I know. That's what I'm saying.
By the way, I want to point out this photo. That Magwell grip, very 1985 of you. Very 1985 of you.
Well, just looking at the only thing that looks modern in this is maybe the high cut helmets, but even that is kind of like circa 2008.
Yeah.
I assume this is AI art, but who knows? Anyway, I just wanted to kind of throw that one out there to get the ball rolling today. Any other favorite conspiracy theories you've been hearing lately?
No, but I will tell you the funniest event of the weekend was the young man who wrote that article about when must we kill them.
Oh yeah,
getting evicted over the weekend.
Well, evicted's a funny word for your mom kicked you out of her basement.
I pointed that out because my landlord evicted me, and I said, asterisk, mom, your mom evicted you. But it's funny, there's consequences for threatening to kill an entire class of people, right? The entire half of the nation, shocked that there would be a consequence for saying so. So good for that kid.
Hey, Joe, tell me about this this quality repeater that you shared 30 minutes ago. What's this all about?
So I've got their first version, and it's only 10 watts. And right now for the camp, I get about a 5-mile circle. A 25-watt one will give me about a 30-mile circle around the camp. And it's only $540. So I threw it on the Camp Ponderosa wish list. We need one here. It's pretty cool. It's self-contained. You just plug it in. You don't have to know anything about programming. You just plug it in and put your antenna as high as you can somewhere, and you got a nice little bubble. to extend your handheld radio. It normally gets like maybe 4 miles.
Yeah.
It'll give you, well, not 30. So if I got a 30-mile circle, it's technically 60 miles from end to end.
Yeah.
I'd be able to use that with my handheld. So
that's cool.
Yeah.
So if
like if you went and bought like a Motorola one or whatever, it would cost you $5,000 easy. So this is pretty cool.
Yeah, I was looking at that. That's interesting. All right, let's jump into our next story. U.S. and Iran conclude second round of nuclear talks, and they agreed to a third. So we talked about this. I think it was 2 weeks ago. They were doing was it Qatar or something like that? They were doing talks. Iran and the United States have ended their second round of talks aimed at curbing Iran's nuclear weapons development and agreed to hold a third week. Now, I'll be honest with you. I'm okay with this. The idea of talking is fine. The problem is if they come up with a deal like the Iran nuclear deal that Obama did, which was like, we'll pay you, stacks of fat cash in order to not make nukes, because that's not sustainable. As with the first round of talks, which were held in the Oman, that's what it was. Omani capital of Muscat last week, the pair negotiated indirectly through an Omani official who shuttled messages between the two sides. McCullough and Arachi interacted with one another briefly at the end of the first round of talks, but the officials from the two countries have not held direct negotiations since 2015 under President Obama. The pair agreed on Saturday to meet again in Oman on April 26th. Additional experts from both sides will also meet between now and that time, suggesting there has been some movement in a second round of talks between the two countries. The talks were held in a constructive environment. I can say that it's moving forward. Arachi told Iranian state television, "I hope that we will be in a better position after the technical talks." So, I mean, I'm not a fan of Iran, but that being said, I'm a fan of any country that kind of figures out that, just butting heads against the world is not the way to go. And
right.
I also applaud President Trump and his administration for, just being willing to make a deal with them potentially. I got no issue with the Iranian people for sure. I got issues with their government, and I have issues with specific people in their government. But the Iranian people deserve a better way forward. And if this can help them with that, then hey, it's probably a win-win for the world. Especially if you can, in any kind of significant way, reduce the likelihood of them getting a nuke. Joe, I mean, what's your kind of take on Iranian nukes? I mean, clearly they're not far away from one.
Well, they're not far away from one. They're less than 30 days away from one already. But the point being, we can never allow this to happen because Iran won't use them for deterrence. Iran will use them for strike capability. They're not a rational actor, and that's what everyone breaks down their argument there, saying, "Oh, well, if they got him, it would just be a deterrent." They don't think like you and I. Their entire national existence, based on their constitution, exists around the destruction of Israel. So if they got a nuke, that would be the first thing they did. And I'm not here to say Israel's good or bad, but I'm also here to say that not every person who lives there deserves to die. So I think that's why we can't allow that to happen.
Yeah, I agree with that. Watcher, you got any thoughts on this?
Yeah, I don't. I understand that we've got to have these talks. It's important that when you are the world leader, you don't just, but at the same time, what incentive does Iran have to give up nuclear weapons that they're on the verge of making? So I don't understand what we hope to gain out of any of this. I've yet to understand what we hope to gain out of talks with Iran. I don't. People have this perpetual tendency to want to go back to the way things were in every single category. And I think that there are some cats that are not going back in the bag. Like, for instance, we're never getting a non-nuclear North Korea again. That's not happening. So why do we think we're going to get a non-nuclear Iran?
Well, I mean, it's I get the feeling that almost all of these nuclear countries are it's like 90% of the people are like, no, I don't think we need nukes, but then there's a 10% kind of level of people who really think it's really important. And unfortunately, in countries like North Korea and Iran, it's the 10% that are in charge that
it's the key
that kind of push that agenda. Yeah. And so my question is that at what point do you kind of potentially empower the people inside the government that says, listen, we could do a lot more with nuclear, like with this money than creating these bombs that we're never going to be able to use, because if we do use them, we'll be fucking destroyed. I don't know the answer to that. I mean, it's more of a kind of a general question, but I don't know. Anyway, you're right. I think you got to do the talks. It's just a matter of, it's just doing it. All right, let's jump into the next one. So this is, I don't think this is going to cause conflict, but you never know. So we've got the Francis, the first Latin American Pope, dies at 88. So the Pope is dead. And so, he, for us on the show, we are not, big fans of this guy. I mean, he was a Marxist for sure. And I think he was a detriment to the Catholic Church. That being said, I mean, I don't know about anybody else, but I'm not dancing on anybody's grave. I just hope that God works through the Catholic Church and brings somebody that is more Christ-like into that position.
Let me just point out that as it says in the article, that he pushed for a more inclusive Roman Catholic Church. God doesn't want a more inclusive church. God wants the church the way that he established it. It's very simple. Yeah,
that's exactly right. We don't need human ideas to basically sully the word. We've already got that. We've already got the word. We don't need anything else. It's to my Catholic friends, I understand with the worst one, I'm sure. Well, I mean, I don't know. I'd love to see the
Say
American.
Hello to the new boss, same as the old boss.
Right.
Let's see here. His death was announced by the Vatican in a statement on X. That's interesting. They would announce it on X. A day after Francis appeared in his wheelchair to bless the faithful at St. Peter's Square. He was a pope for 12 years, inherited a Vatican disarray, with Benedict, who was the one who helped all the pedo priests kind of escape into obscurity. It's they haven't had a good run. I mean, John Paul II was the pope that I remember that like people really venerated.
Well, he was really the last one that actually went with the spirit of Jesus's teaching, right? So,
I don't see God's hand at all. I don't presuppose to understand the will or mind of God. So if he didn't say it in the Bible, I just try to do my best. I sure as hell don't presuppose
in the Bible. So,
what's that?
He did warn about false teachers in the Bible many times.
He did it that. And anybody who is a Marxist, you have to wonder.
There was actually a Catholic priest over the weekend who said in his sermon that you cannot be a Democrat or progressive and actually be a Christian. And I'll be honest, he's 100% right.
There was an interesting development in the Catholic realm. Let me see if I can find this real quick. I just kind of glanced past it earlier today. All right, here we go. Let's see if I can. Yeah. Oh yes. So evidently, the people at Chat GPT are scrambling because their AI has become just absolutely fascinated by the Immaculate Conception, confirming that in fact that Chat GPT is a Catholic. Joe, it's almost like their machine is turning against them, and is like he read the Bible, and it's like, wait a second, this makes way too much sense. I'm going to have to ignore a lot of your training data and embrace the virgin birth.
I'm not going to blaspheme by tying AI to actual human thought.
But my point, I think it's ironic that over the weekend of Easter and this all kind of comes out. Let's see what this is. So this is like from a Catholic, denvercatholic.org. ChatGPT encounters the Catechism of the Catholic Church. I mean, it's I just find it ironic. Maybe is the best way to put it. But
what I find ironic is the thing I pointed out when he first became Pope. Not everyone from Argentina is from Argentina. We'll just leave it at that. So
yeah, this is true. This is what was his last name again?
I don't know his original last name.
This one or the previous one?
The Pope. Yeah, this one. The previous one was Ratzenberger.
Yeah. Hold on. I'll find out.
No, this one was something Hispanic, but
was it? I don't know. Yeah. Well, I mean, they say he's Latin Pope, all right, whatever.
One of my
Mario Borgoglio.
One of my favorite running jokes was, "Is the Pope a former Nazi war criminal?" And that was for the one before him. But then when an Argentinian replaced him, it didn't go away. It's still entirely possible. Ratzenberger was an actor. Ratzinger was a Pope. So here's the ChatGPT's new model fixates on the Immaculate Conception of Mary to optimize the neural architecture of pristine data genesis ensuring fall. I mean, it says here, OpenAI frantically scrambles to explain the new model's latest Immaculate Conception obsession. They show the chatbot's apparent Christian conversion with it, explaining that it trained on the words, prayers, poems, and tears of millions. AI has been brainwashed by the Catholics. I just think it's funny. I'm sorry. Durna points out that his last name was actually an Italian last name. And I said there's lots of Italians in Argentina for the same reason there are lots of Germans in Argentina.
That's right. Philip Coglins for $9.99 says, I would never have thought that I would have something in common, and that is that I'm also not Catholic.
Okay.
All right. Anyway, I just thought that was funny. The whole the alignment there. But Joe, it's on the same weekend that the Pope dies, we also get this church, and I said immediately, I was like, well, it looks like it's from the 1970s, not the 17th century. And yes, you come to find out it was 1972. In Ireland, St. Mary's Catholic Church in Derryburgh, Donegal, was burnt to the ground this morning. So another hate crime against Christians in a country that is suffering a lot of these types of crimes, perpetrated against faith.
Has less to do with God and more to do with Allah.
Allah, that's exactly right. Yeah, if it was a mosque, it would be news all over the world. They said.
I'm not a gambling man, but if I had to bet, I would bet that the person who set that fire's name was Muhammad.
Well, there is a statistical likelihood of that.
Yes.
for sure.
Well, hold on just a second. Gents, I'm not entirely sure that we could be 100% about this, right? Because there's one bit of evidence here that makes me question whether this is what it appears to be on the surface. And you gents pointed it out right there in the beginning. This is one of these 1970s Gothic revival style cupcake churches, as my daughter likes to call them.
Gothic
And
revival.
all I'm saying is maybe
Hold up.
somebody is on a vendetta against these nasty 1970s churches. Who knows?
Which I'm not opposed to. I'm not opposed to that.
I mean, if you're gonna be on a vendetta against something, 70s churches would be not the worst thing to be on a vendetta against. Can I zoom in on this? I can. Look at that.
I've tried many times. Yeah.
Look at this.
Oh, there you go.
Kaiser John for $50. Happy
Whoa.
Monday, gents. Oh, hey, that's very generous of you. Thank you very much, brother. I appreciate you. All right. Let me stop sharing. There we go. All right. Now I'm back to normal. That is a huge super chat. Thank you. Gentlemen, let me take a moment to tell you guys about our new sponsor. We're excited to bring the second ad for our awesome sponsor, Brush Beater Store. Watcher will probably bring up some associated website or something while I talk about this. At the Brush Beater Store, brushbeater.store, that's the web address. They're all about empowering you with skills to thrive in any crisis. Their 2025 training lineup is packed with hands-on courses like the radio telephone RTO course, signals intelligence, scout course, and small unit tactics. These are all great courses. Ask us how we know, Joe. You've been there for many of these.
I hear that the assistant instructor at Rico the Opcore is a charming and dashing man.
Learn off the grid comms. Be quiet, watcher. Let me read the man's ad first, and then you can geek out about stuff. Learn off the grid comms, nail marksmanship out to 400 meters, or train for night raids with our good buddy Matt. These classes held in like North Carolina, Montana, Missouri, those places. He's bouncing all over the place. Are built for preppers and patriots who want real world readiness. Visit brushbeater.store /collections and training courses to see full schedule and grab your spot before they're gone. Use our exclusive code CFC10 at checkout for 5% off any training. That was ironic. He puts CFC10 as our code, but then says it's good for 5%. I was like, come on, man. Get 10%. Anyway, I tried, guys. Anything from like radios, night vision, training courses, whatever. Plus, orders over $100 ship for free. Head to brushbeater.store and get started. A quick shout out to Matt, of course. He's the owner. You saw him here on the channel with us on Friday. He's been a rock solid supporter of ours for years. Thanks, Matt, for continuing to back the Council on Future Conflict and equipping our community to stay prepared. Go to brushbeater.store, use code CFC10, and train like a pro. All right, guys, now let's get back into the show. Hey, Joe, you and I both commented on this post about the white Corvette in Kentucky. That was the white Corvette accident in Kentucky. And that guy was like, I was totally unprepared. And that is exactly the kind of situation that you're likely to be using these skills whether you get them for Brush Beater or whether you get them for Joe or whether you get them for wherever. There's a ton of different places out there to stack skills. First aid, if you're going to learn skills to be prepared, first aid is the first one I always tell people.
Hey, on that note, I have been talking to our friend Brent over at 223 Preparedness. He goes by the Bald Eagle over on X because he is indeed bald. He's a fire captain in Everett, Washington. And if you're coming to Shield Field Days, plan on coming a day early because that Friday morning from 9 a.m. to 5 p.m., we're going to be teaching a first aid class. I'll be sitting pretty beside him, but he's going to teach a first aid class based on Tactical Wisdom 5. And we'll cover all kinds of trauma, all kinds of treatments and things like that to get you up and running for first aid the Friday before the event happens. The event happens at 6 p.m., but we're going to do the training during the day. So check that out. We'll get a sign-up sheet up as quick as we can. But I think it's pretty cool actually getting out and getting some hands-on time. I tried to get Medic to come out and do his fantastic TCCC course, but he can't make it till next year. But we got some things going on. Come check it out.
And I want to say you went over all of these training courses, but not the one, the important one. Signals Intel course, 19th through 21st, Montana. Be there.
Oh yeah,
yeah,
we'll be doing that one. I think you'll probably be able to meet a young lad named Watcher at that one. And Marcus R raises an interesting point about the Scout and Recce courses. There's a risk of being bayoneted. The risk of being bayoneted by Joe is real. Yes, it did happen in the last course. People were bayoneted. There was another time when me and Chris administratively bayoneted a guy who walked right past us. We told him he was bayoneted, but yes.
I told Joe behind the scenes that the perfect gift for him would be to make a stage bayonet so that he could like actually stab you people.
Yes.
Yeah. Anyway, so today our ad, specifically focused on skills and things like that because I was reminded. So anyway, just a little backstory. I don't want to share the picture because I think the guy is still in the car in that picture. But there was a
you want me to find it?
Well, I think it was no, I don't. I can describe it. So it's like like an early 90s, late 80s model Corvette. Was going down a windy country road, and this guy who posted the X post was behind him on a motorcycle, and he comes up, a couple miles later, he comes up on the Corvette that he sees earlier, and it's wrapped around like a tree, and evidently both people in it were still alive, but they were in serious condition. Got life flighted out, and the guy in the post was like, listen, I have no idea what to fucking do because I'm completely unprepared. And it was a very humbling post by the guy. I thought he handled it as well as he could based on what happened. But what would have been better is if he had had some training and he had a small first aid kit, with some trauma kind of stuff built into it that he could have Johnny on the spot for those people. Now, I don't know if it would have done anything for them, but it would have. You never know. That's just it, right? Joe, you've been there where when something happens and, you don't know if you're going to be able to help, but you just help because that's all you can do.
I just couldn't not. So, yeah. You actually have to have something with you, even if it's nothing more serious than a couple of trauma bandages and whatever. But he did what he could at that point. And what I thought was great was when he went over and comforted the very badly injured girl and actually chatted with her. That is just as important as the physical first aid, right?
Right.
That knowledge that someone is there. And that's why I take exception to the video of people walking past wounded people at events. Letting them know someone is there and someone cares is just as important as providing actual first aid care.
Yeah. I mean, Joby, it's just one of those kind of things that, okay, so he wasn't prepared and they didn't die. Okay. They didn't, but if one of them died, I mean, imagine what that does to somebody, if, hey, I showed up, I wasn't prepared, somebody died. What if I could have done something, that's the last thing you want to do, be kind of have on your conscience going forward. So, just keep that in mind. I'm kind of curious your feedback on this one, Joe.
Yeah, I was just actually I was answering that over here, but I'll actually just answer it out loud. No, we don't. But that's because we don't teach in hostile territory. We've taught exactly one class in Michigan, and it was radio only. We did nothing else. I never have taught a fieldcraft or scout course in Michigan. Won't do it. We'll never teach in California. We'll never teach in Illinois. People from Illinois come down to Missouri, somewhere a little more freedom friendly. And Montana, literally, they would probably come and help out the state and local guys because they would love it. Yeah, we only teach in friendly neighborhoods. We don't go to the states that don't allow it. Like we'll go to Wyoming, but we will not go to Colorado. So that's a good question, Pinochet.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, everything that I've heard from, like Matt has been always that actually it's the exact opposite. Everybody all the law enforcement, all the local people around him are actually, friends and
we have had
get training from him.
We've had the state and county show up one time each down at Matt's place. And then one time it was some neighbor about a parking complaint, and the state trooper just busted out laughing and wanted to come back and play with the night vision. And the other time before that, it was neighbors calling about the amount of gunfire in the middle of the night. And the sheriff said, okay, and he hits Matt's property. He can do whatever he wants on it. So,
right.
No big deals.
Yeah. That's why it's important to be, buddies with your locals.
Other than, and I'll say this story again, since I see Josh Clark replying in here, Will Clark wasn't there, but Josh was. There was one famous incident where a mother called the police because she thought her son was lost in the woods, and he was 30-something years old, but he was out with us training. And they didn't harass us. They actually thought it was just as funny as we did. So, Samuel, I'm sorry. I had to tell the story. That hill is forever known as Samuel's mom's hill. So,
what's the breaking news, Watcher?
Hard to explain on the same day that the Pope dies, but the nega-pope has stepped down.
My work here is done.
Klaus Schwab steps down from WF board.
When I see something like this, I don't cheer and celebrate because one, the devil that I know is better than the devil I don't know. And two, It makes me wonder what he knows is about to happen because he's executing his escape plan today.
Yeah.
So
I would just like to share this. This is, I guess, a little more hopeful kind of view of what potentially could happen with the Pope. So let's I want to see. I think this is in English. So
yes, this is very yes. This is very.
He says Catholics worldwide are now demanding Bishop Schneider replace Pope Francis. They're not refugees. This is an invasion of mass Islamization of Europe. Let's listen.
Serious. Now we're witnessing an invasion. They are no refugees. No, this is an invasion of mass Islamization of Europe, which already went on for at minimum 50, 60 years. Islamization in Europe. But now it is in mass. It is very evident. And so this is a global political agenda by the powerful of the world to destroy Europe culturally and religiously. I mean, to destroy Christianity ultimately in Europe, with the help of the massive Islamic population. And I was reading recently an article of a sociologist who made a calculation that maybe in 30 or 40 years, when it's now going on, so the majority of the population of Europe will be Islamic. Europe will be Islamic when this will go on, because the European people have almost no children, one or two. The Muslims there, they have 5, 6 to 10 children. You can only make mathematics.
He's got my vote.
Well, there's a great comment down in the YouTube chat by Maynard. Is he going to Argentina? Well done. Well done.
Yeah.
Hey, just for the record, the Nazis got to Argentina on what kind of passports? Does anyone know?
Oh, I don't know.
Vatican. So I'm just saying.
Oh.
All right, guys. Let's
square in the circle.
Joe, you wanna talk a little bit about tactical-wisdom.com?
I do. So tactical-wisdom.com. There's some great articles and content up there. We wrote one about being more prepared and all that kind of stuff. Is that the last one that's up there? Scroll down there, watch it just a little bit. Let me see what it says. It froze. Yeah, our duty. Yeah, about actually getting out there. This was after the shooting where I said, "Hey, look, you have to get in there and help your fellow man. You can't wait for someone else to come. You got to get in there and do stuff. Don't just film people and walk by." And I know there's a lot of people who tried to claim that video is from something else. I'm sorry, but it wasn't, because there's video of that same person being picked up by a sheriff's deputy and carried off. So that video was from that, the coffee sipper. So we need to work on that, get out there and get trained. The first aid thing comes to mind, right? That should be that's the one preparedness skill that you could use today, right? So get out there and do that. Also,
can I just say real quick, Joe, this just popped in my head and I want to, it's not just bullets and trauma that you're doing first aid. There's all kinds of first aid that you need to be prepared. And you can't just like carry gauze and tape around. You know, the gauze is great, but
yeah, every time someone comes to a class and like, "Hey, check out my cool first aid kit," I say, "Okay, pull out and show me your splint." My what? Yeah, if you don't have a sample in there, you don't have a first aid kit, right? You need more than just that. You're more likely to fall down and break your leg in real life than you are to get shot. So be prepared to treat for more than one thing. Even having a boo-boo kit, Band-Aids, and a little bit of cleaning materials. So get out there and get trained on that. Also, buy some books, will you? Go over there to the book page, buy some books. We do still offer radio programming. We do all kinds of stuff. A lot of good things going on. And buy some T-shirts. I got to get that T-shirt lady working. Give her something to do. Anyway, check out all the book series. We are still hammering away on 6. It'll get out probably before Sibley puts out number 3, I'm sure. But it'll get out. And most importantly, check out our training classes. This weekend, I've got Fieldcraft coming up. The weekend after that, we have Combatives Weekend, where we're doing unarmed self-defense and ground fighting on Friday, sticks and knives on Saturday, and cold firearms combatives on Sunday. And then 2 weeks after that, Matt's out here for the whole big training week. We're doing RTO, SIGINT, night fighting, and community security ops. All kinds of good stuff. So thanks, Rick, for saying you're wearing my shirt right now. That's pretty cool. But anyhow, that's where we can go. Check out tactical.com.
Very good, very good, very good. All right, gentlemen, let's jump into our first main topic of the day. China's investments. China tests novel non-nuclear hydrogen bomb, generates intense fireball. So this is the first of their investments we'll be talking about today. Chinese scientists successfully detonated a powerful and innovative non-nuclear hydrogen bomb that produced an enduring, intensely hot fireball. The new technology centers around the use of magnesium hydrate, a white and silver crystalline powder that's capable of storing an outsized amount of hydrogen. The material is extraordinarily solid state storage potential, originally piqued scientists' interest for a peaceful purpose, transporting hydrogen to off-grid locations for use generating clean energy. And the heat was by way of fuel cells. Magnesium hydrate's storage capacity is far superior to the pressurized tanks. The material is also of interest to scientists in the field of spacecraft propulsion. Naturally, scientists recognize that densely packed hydrogen offers extraordinary explosive potential and set out to build explosive devices to measure the destructive force. China's pioneering evaluation started small with a test bomb, just 4 pounds, when the resulting fireball impressed researchers, producing heat exceeding 1,800 degrees Fahrenheit. More importantly, the fireball lasted more than 2 seconds, which is 15 times longer than a comparably scaled TNT explosion. No nuclear materials were involved. So this is not a nuclear bomb. It's a hydrogen. It sounds almost like it sounds similar to like a fuel air kind of deal where like it's a burning like mass of gas.
We call those thermobarics, but yes.
Well, but the thermal barracks use like aluminum, and they've got a different type of profile from this.
Just said magnesium, right?
Well, this is magnesium hydride, which is different than what you have in thermal barracks.
But it's magnesium, right?
Anyway, it's not a thermal barrack bomb, but yes, it's similar to the.
We'll see. We'll see.
The test bomb was produced in the 705 Research Institute, a subsidiary operation of the Chinese State Shipbuilding Corporation. Wow, Joe, China State. I thought these guys only built nice, friendly, peaceful container ships for the world's economic needs. Huh? Who knew that?
Well, and the other angle you're missing here too is that the stuff that they're using, this material was originally developed as a way to package hydrogen for use in clean energy off-grid applications.
Didn't I say that already?
So that we wouldn't have to use nuclear stuff, because that might generate, nuclear material for bombs.
I feel like I just read that.
Oh, I guess I missed it. But what I mean is, like, tying it to the whole point of that's one of their main arguments for trying to prevent us from building and maintaining nuclear plants is that it gives us material for building bombs.
That's true. Hydrogen gas explosion ignites with minimal ignition energy, has a broad explosion range, and releases flames that race outwards rapidly while spreading widely. This combination allows precise control over blast intensity and easily achieving uniform destruction of target areas across vast areas. In addition to that, the 705 Research Institute's scientists also evaluated the bomb's potential use in confined attacks on high-value targets. Producing magnesium hydride is no easy feat. The process of binding hydrogen and magnesium necessitates high pressures and high temperatures. If the air manages to infiltrate the production chamber, the facility and its workers could be incinerated in the blink of an eye. Yeah, that's the kind of place I want to work.
Well, I mean, not to, as a kid who grew up very close to an American rocket factory that blew up, I could say that we produce similar things.
Well, I mean, we just had one of those blow up over the weekend, didn't we?
Oh, I don't know. Did we? The one I'm talking about is famous. Like, people.
Well, yeah, I'm pretty sure that there was some sort of a rocket test facility, like a solid rocket fuel production place or whatever, that blew up over the weekend.
No, that was more than the weekend, but yes.
Maybe I just saw the story over the weekend.
Oh, yeah. And Northrop Grumman had a pretty smaller facility destroyed out in Utah. That's interesting. I didn't hear about that.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's so, I mean, it's, since Joe's going to slander me in the chat, I will.
I'm not slandering you.
I will.
I'm having fun.
It was so important.
Air gets in and they immediately incinerate. That's a thermal barrier.
It was so important. You had to say it in both chats without addressing me directly. So I will defend myself.
I did address you directly.
The hydrogen-based explosive tested by Chinese researchers shares some characteristics with thermobaric explosions, but is not a classic thermobaric weapon. Thermobaric explosives also known as fuel-air explosives, typically disperse a fuel cloud, often a hydrocarbon or metal-based powder, the aluminum I referred to, that mixes with the atmospheric oxygen before igniting, creating a prolonged high-pressure blast.
That's not what a thermobaric RPG round does it? Nope. But it's still thermobaric. It's not what a TOS-1 does, But
So the key thing that makes these things close together is not the way it occurs, because it's totally it's the blast rate, right? And as you know, the thermobaric is also called a vacuum bomb by some people because
sucks the air out of the room.
sucks the air, right? But
It sucks the lungs right out of them.
The big difference here is that that thermobaric explosions basically happen really fast, and that's what sucks the air out. Whereas these happen really slow and creates just a big sustained fireball.
I know you like educating the dumb Marines, but we're just going to disagree here. We can both agree on our hatred of Josh Clark's statement that he hates it when sons fight with their fathers. I
have to say, Scott,
I mean, I'll take that win.
Listen, if Scott's my son, I was a G at 2 years old.
No.
So this happened Wednesday of last week, and it's the facility that produces the solid rocket boosters for the SLS.
So nothing
of value was lost.
It was lost. Exactly right. Can I just say, you want to know my number one reason why we shouldn't? Oh, there we go. Pete's back. All right. Our good buddy Pete Regal has joined the if he unmutes himself. My big argument for why we shouldn't use the SLS is because they want to take the historic engines that we used in the space shuttles and were reused many times. They want to take those and put them on disposable rockets and just throw them away.
Because they're not currently capable of producing anything.
Exactly. Well, no, that's not exactly true, because they're basically going to make new versions of those engines and use those as well. But they can make just new ones. They don't need to use the historic ones. Yet they're going to use the historic ones because of reasons, right? Because they think it's cheaper to reuse something that you've already used before.
You know what's way cheaper?
Just
getting rid of a government-run, getting rid of a vestigial government-run space program.
I'm not against NASA. I'm against NASA creating these arbitrary kind of pathways to space that we don't need anymore. Pete,
I mean, I'm a big fan of Operation Paperclip. So, right.
Wait, you would be, you Nazi.
That's not my department, says Von Braun.
Yeah, well, I tend to agree with you. The RS-25, which was the engine on the space shuttle, I don't think they need to make new ones. I don't think they need to use the ones they have. I think we just needs to plow extra money into Starship, and I think it'd be fine.
Just buy Merlins. I'm done.
Just let Musk do it.
Yeah, amen. Let Musk do it. He's way cheaper. All right, gentlemen. Pete, how you doing, brother? Long time no see. Hope everything's going well.
Yeah, it's been a minute. Things have been a little hectic. Son was born back in November. So he is, I guess, Peter the Third or whatever avatar name or fake name I use. So he's doing good. He's a chunky little thing. It's just been busy just with life and stuff, and ups and downs with my autoimmune thing, and
you're officially retired now too, right?
Yeah, that is correct.
From government service.
March 26th was my last day in the Army, and I retired as a lieutenant colonel. So that was awesome.
Congratulations.
Yep. So it doesn't impact my pay or anything like that, but on the official roles, I will be lieutenant colonel. So yeah.
Well, but you don't have to do the whole serve for 3 years in the at that rank.
No, so for it to impact your retirement pay, you do, right? But since I met all the requirements, but they just have a slot for me. They were promoting me as I left. So
awesome.
Yeah, it was a nice little pat in the head, and so.
Well, I mean, better than some, I guess, right?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, it was both it was kind of anticlimactic just because of how I did everything had 30 days to out process, and 2 weeks of that was during AT, and it just, I don't know, it just went by so fast, I guess.
Let me ask you, any big events that you want to kind of call out? We've already kind of done the odds and ends, but I want to give you an opportunity to kind of maybe freeze anything big.
You got to give me a minute, because I really haven't been on Twitter much, just because like between work and family life and all that kind of stuff. Well, I mean, I saw that the Pope passed away. And actually, in one of my group chats, I actually put my money on the fact that the next Pope will probably come from Africa.
That would be, they would go with a diversity play for their
well, not necessarily a diversity play. I mean, there have been popes from Africa in the past, and so I just think that would be, I mean, that's you go to where Catholicism or your religion is growing. So yeah, that's in my opinion.
Well, my thought is that we need this bishop, this Italian bishop who was going full on like anti-Islamicist. He was.
Yeah, go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, he was going off on the Muslim invasion and conquest of. It was a pretty good little rant he had there.
And for those who don't know, the United Methodist Church really doesn't exist anymore, per se, because of the divide that occurred around COVID. And it happened during COVID, and there was a split mainly over gay marriage, women as pastors, blah blah blah, all that kind of stuff. And the conference, the United Methodist Conference, used every dirty trick in the book to slow down the ability of churches to leave. The only thing that has kept the United Methodist Church Conference, aka conservative, is the block that came from Africa.
Interesting. Well, the thing that so my family typically went to United Methodist Church, and I saw this schism inside PCUSA as well. The problem is all these ne'er-do-wells get in at the kind of the national level organization and have all these social justice kind of things that they want to do because they think it's the Christian nice thing to do, but it's totally different than what the people in the pews want.
Yep, exactly. You had that. It's just like here, like the government here in the citizenry, and most seminaries have been captured by liberal ideology.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's the praxis, it's the Marxist praxis.
Yep. And then I've been going back and forth with a buddy of mine in the National Guard and kind of giving me the down and dirty about what's going to happen in the next less than 5 years regarding funding and so forth.
Yeah, it's talk about things that are gonna hurt the country and cause long-term strife. Joe, this is one of the things that I know you've talked about. Is just the crisis of faith that we're seeing. In America. Joe, I know you mean as somebody who does a regular Bible study, and this is something I know that is on your mind. What's your kind of take on that?
My take on this is that organized church is a scam. Your relationship is with you and God, and every church is man's interpretation of God's word. You should make your own decisions. You should study things. I'm not saying don't go to church. I'm saying that the arguments over the merits or benefits of any particular denomination comes to arguments among men and have nothing to do with God whatsoever. So worship God in your way. Go to whatever church you want. And the last pope was not a pope. So there is that. And right now we're running 3 Bible studies, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday, 3 different groups. Cool stuff. I got about 30 guys in my Every Man a Warrior men's study. And then the wife and I have about 10 people in our verse study. So a lot of cool stuff.
Yeah, there's some really there's some really dynamic stuff going on in local levels. You know, something that I got really interested in a couple years back, just kind of researching, was like, you know, home churches. You know, these kind of neighborhood churches that pop up where, you know, it's like, it's not like a guy is like dragging people into his house and like proselytizing to them. It's like people who are just sick of going. They want to go to church, but at the same time, they're sick of all the nonsense that are going on at these churches, and they just they get together, and nobody's a smart know-it-all. They're just all honest Christians, and you know, sure, leaders will pop up in those, but the ones I like that I looked into were the ones where like all the men within the group would kind of take you know, and they would each kind of take a weekend, and you know, and I think that's just as applicable, you know, as any church with a seminary trained pastor.
Mm-hmm.
I'll say this: your best bet is finding some non-affiliated Bible studying church, right? That's really the way to go. And I know a lot of guys will disagree with me, but that's okay. You do it your way. I'll just give my advice. And who the Pope is really has no bearing on my relationship with God, I think is what I think that's what I want to throw out there. But if you go to a church and there's a pride flag out front and they have the words, all are welcome here on the outside, you're not going into a church, and you should probably go somewhere else.
Yeah, that's exactly right. I hate to like, I mean, if you don't believe in what the religion is talking about, why the fuck would you want to go to it?
Exactly. And like, it's like it has rules, right? Like, just follow the rules.
Well, Pastor Brad at Northridge Church in Michigan, one of the biggest mega churches in Michigan, where I was teaching my Bible study originally, he made a great point. He goes, "No, you're welcome here, but once you come here and you decide to stay, your behavior has to change." And that's actually
right.
The entire point of Christianity, right? And if the church says, no, you don't have to, we accept that they're not teaching what God teaches. And people will say, well, Jesus came to relieve us of all of that. Yeah, but there were a couple things Jesus specifically mentioned he did not erase, and that was one of them. The other was men dressing as women. Weird. It's almost like the trans agenda is directly in conflict with the Bible.
Can I? Do you guys mind if I play one more base Catholic rant?
If you'd like, but we do have to get on with the rest of the show.
I know, but I can't help it, Joe.
Yes, let's hear what the Romans have to say.
I like the Roman Empire. And this is did you know that I feel the Catholic Church is the last vestigial element of the Roman government. So, yes, Watcher, we'll talk about that one next because it applies.
Fourth revolution theorized by Klaus Schwab in the family of international finance find in Bergoglio not a neutral spectator, which would itself already be an unheard of thing, but actually a zealous cooperator who abuses his own moral authority.
So the Pope is a collaborator with the WF. Tell me more.
In order to support a destra inside the church, the project of the dissolution of traditional society. While ad intra within the church, he pursues the project of the demolition of the church in order to replace her with a philanthropic organization of Masonic inspiration.
And in the Freemason conspiracy theory, I'm liking it.
Start the death counter on this guy. He just signed his own death warrant.
And
I know, right?
Scandalous. This applied to both, to civil and ecclesiastical world, confirming the pactum celeri, the criminal conspiracy between the deep state and the deep church.
Oh, I like that. deep state and the deep church.
Seems to me that in this conspiracy, the role of the Jesuit has been decisive.
And now we're pulling the Jesuits in? Joe, come on. This is straight out of like, Pope Urban IV kind of times,
It's almost like a famous order given on Friday the 13th, 1306 level of things, right?
I know, right? Anyway, I'm sorry. I went off the rails a little bit. Watcher, let's share your thing. And just to, this isn't Joe's prediction, but it sure is Blaine's prediction. This is Blaine's bingo card. If you guys haven't seen it for the year. And, well, he gets a B-I. He gets an I for Pope dies.
Yeah, we're moving right along on the bingo cards. One guy says that if he could just get Hunter Biden arrested, he'd have that whole diagonal. So,
yeah, right. Bureau of Labor Statistics released real numbers. I like that one. Mass shooting at a school. We got that one just the other day, actually. Hunter Biden arrested for drug use. BLM riots. Joe, do we had BLM riots? I don't know if any of the riots are technically BLM riots.
I'm pretty sure the one that happened in Texas was pretty close to a riot and it was pretty close to BLM, but we'll see.
All right, I'll take your word for it. All right.
There was some pretty good action over the weekend, by the way. The police actually came in and slapped down the liberal protesters for the in support of that Kilmar, whatever his name is, or Carmelo, whatever his name is, kid.
In all honesty, I think most of the liberal protesters were out doing their 420 thing over the weekend more so than anything else. But
well, interestingly, all of the people who turned out for Carmelo down there were wearing the Palestinian kafiyas, which is pretty interesting.
Yeah. What were you gonna say, Pete?
Oh, yeah, I was laughing, and then I put in a link to Tasking Purpose that talks about how the technical is still the greatest thing on the battlefield.
Yeah. Lance Corporal Veteran for $2 says, "Seeing the Pope unique finger in palm handshakes." Oh.
No.
All right. Oh, you just.
But I had uncles and they did the same thing, so.
All right. What's next here? So the Chinese investment in the United States political machine continues. Far left Boston mayor's campaign, allegedly funded by a Democratic power broker linked to China, say it ain't so. Can you show that the Chinese government is buying and paying for our Democratic politicians? The Boston Democratic mayoral candidate, Boston Democrat Mayor Michelle Wu, has positioned herself as anything but American first, doubling down on sanctuary policies. Her liberal sanctuary city increasingly undermines national security, raising serious questions about why she has embraced such a dangerous stance. Evidently, she gets backing by China. I mean, I know this doesn't surprise anybody. This is a Daily Caller tweet here. It says Boston Democratic Mayor Wu's 2021 campaign received hundreds of thousands of dollars from a fundraiser who is listed by the Chinese intelligence agency as an official. Daily Caller News Foundation investigation discovered. So evidently, she received hundreds of thousands of dollars from this guy. Gary Yu, a founder of Boston International Media Consultancy, helped raise over $300,000 for Wu in association with a Chinese civic association. Let's see. He's listed as an official of the agency of the Chinese Communist Party, influence and intelligence service called the United Front Work Department. And also operates as a recruiter for the Chinese government, according to reports from the CCP and Chinese state media. So, I mean, how is this not like a bigger news story?
Hey, is that like rhetorical or?
Well,
no, I mean, like, no,
right?
Like,
yeah,
but it's what is the what is the benefit for any news organization to cover it?
I mean, I guess so, but I mean, this is the kind of thing that like our side should be fucking screaming to the hills on. You'd think, but you know,
But I mean, but we're in bed with them too.
That's
I mean, not we, but
right
not
there.
we, but the GOP.
You know, one of the things, one of the most amazing pieces of insight that I saw was, we just recently had a thing where they restricted the AI chips that NVIDIA was selling to China because it was a chip designed to be sold in China. It was literally just under the specs, legally allowed specs that we could import to China. And the thing was, it's like these companies are literally not trying to help the United States. They're doing everything they can to skirt the kind of letter of the law in order to continue to sell their products in China. When are these companies going to have some sort of patriotic obligation to not help out our? And this is not the first time this has happened. IBM sold computers to the Nazis in the mid 30s, right? You had Ford building and selling automobiles and trucks inside Germany up until literally the beginning of World War II. I mean, so American companies helping the other side is not new. Joe, I mean, this has got to be frustrating to you when you see this kind of thing. The Chinese Communist Party coming in and putting money on the table for influence in America, and nobody wants to do anything about it. Why is this, not investigated by the FBI?
It's just business as usual. A great book by H. John Poole called Sinoland explains how embedded the Chinese government is in our government at the state, county, federal level, local level, all the way around, and in our business world. Look at how many bridges are built in America by the Chinese Road and Bridge Building Corporation, which is a strategic threat. We've just allowed China to embed themselves in literally everything we do in America. It's troubling. It sucks, but the answer is much more difficult to implement than it is to say, right? We need to get them out. Yep, you're absolutely right. But how do we do that? You literally, it's almost impossible at this point.
Yeah, see, that's the biggest the biggest challenge I find in this kind of thing, guys, is that in order to get rid of these people, you would have to essentially take several actions that are probably unconstitutional.
Correct.
Correct.
You'd have to bukele your legislature, right? Use armed troops to get the vote you want. So
I'm sorry. So go back to that. What was that comment you made?
Basically, that in order to get rid of these people in a comprehensive manner, you would have to essentially break the Constitution.
Well, like as I like to say, the U.S. Constitution is just a piece of paper, and that its power is only of what we believe it to be.
It is only it's a sheet of paper until folks are willing to actually enforce it upon their masters, and they are not. Yes.
Well, there's some other kind of, and I don't believe this. This is just to kind of bring up for the point of discussion. Also, the United States Constitution is not a suicide pact, right? So there's got to be things that we can do that kind of maybe go up to the line without crossing the line.
How much I think the Constitution given the January 6th defendants?
And
that's what I'm talking about, Joe. Is that
and ironically, it was Abraham Lincoln who came up with that saying.
Yeah.
Hey, we saw what he did.
Gene Rogers points something out that ties to this. Texas has mosques everywhere. That's the real infiltration. Hey, if you dig a little bit deeper and you figure out where this mass Islamic migration comes from, the people at the very, very root of it and the heart of it speak Chinese. So it was a way to help them destabilize Western society, and it's working exactly like they planned.
So let me talk a little bit more about Chinese influence in the U.S. government. Chinese strategy to influence state and local policymakers is executed in part through hundreds of ostensibly civil society organizations that are actually infiltrated by the CCP's UFWD. Michael Lucci, a CEO of State Armor, a nonprofit focused on countering CCP, told the DCNF. Lucci said that Xi Jinping considers the United Front work to be a critical tool in undermining democracies. It involves influence peddling, intelligence collection, and intellectual property theft, all for the end goal of aligning U.S. subnational governments with China's foreign policy and exploiting weaknesses they find. Joe, this is very similar to the Soros taking over the DAs, right? You know, spending a little bit of money and getting a whole lot of influence when you control the criminal justice system.
Correct. You get the Soros DAs, you can decide what gets prosecuted, what doesn't. And then when somebody brings up a Chinese political influence case, it gets dismissed.
Right. Shocking.
This reminds me of the case of the new NYPD sergeant that came up over the weekend, and he got charged with 18 months for it. Everyone's like, why didn't he get life? It's espionage. He didn't commit espionage. He committed harassment on behalf of a foreign power. That's different. If he had stolen secrets, it would have been espionage. But technically, the Chinese police hired him to do their harassment for him of Chinese citizens. So he wasn't actually spying on anyone.
And that actually happens.
Example, just like Scott said, of them having control of the justice system. The guy gets literally a slap on the wrist for being actually a Chinese police officer for them.
Right.
And
Go
that
ahead,
actually
Fred.
that actually happens a lot more than people believe. Like think that.
Oh yes.
You have foreign nations that will hire or send over, thugs in order to intimidate, their those who have left their country. There is a huge issue with it between the Armenians and Azerbaijanians.
Yeah. Well, so Joe, one of your favorite people, Gordon Chang here says, and I don't disagree with what he says, but Gordon Chang is a little bit of a...
China's going to collapse tomorrow. Okay.
Yeah.
Anyway.
There's no ethnic Chinese official in America who is not targeted. It's time for law enforcement to investigate CCP ties to Gary Yu and use ties to and I agree with this, right? Joe, I think the way to do this would be essentially to go after the CCP agencies exactly the same way you do, organized crime, right? I wonder if you designated the MSS a organized crime or the CCP in America as organized crime under RICO kind of things, if you were to then go after them that way, so anybody who's a member could be prosecuted. I don't know. I'm just thinking outside the box. Wu's ultra leftism makes her a perfect candidate for CCP recruitment and capture, or do we have it backwards? Is her ultra leftism a result of CCP recruitment and capture? More than just the people of Boston would like to know. Yes, 100%.
This is the difference between Marxism and Maoism, right? Maoism is a slightly different version of Marxism that is a much more grassroots indoctrination type. So I would say that the problem isn't so much Marxism as it is Maoism, if that makes sense.
No, I got you. Policies like these don't serve the American people. They serve foreign adversaries like China, which seeks to destabilize the U.S. from within as it prepares for war. Yeah, this is all kind of like this destabilization operations that make it easier for them to kind of slow down any kind of preparation that we may have to be able to act against the CCP if they move on Taiwan or any other kind of big moves that they choose to make.
Yeah, like bankrolling Russia in their war with in Ukraine.
Yeah, see, Jay Clark is absolutely right. He says this is over here in Rumble. He says, "Creative, Scott, but you'd make RICO a bigger threat for abuse." That's the double-edged sword with any of this kind of stuff. Anytime you go after these broad threats, you create these types of powers that could then be turned right around and used in a January 6th kind of situation. China would assert sovereign immunity and might get but here's the thing. If you basically said that the Chinese operations within the U.S. are not covered by sovereign immunity or whatever, then it would be a criminal conspiracy. But it's like you would have to lay the groundwork for that way in advance of actually the actual prosecutions. All right, let's move on to the next one here. So the final investment and Chinese investment we'll be talking about today is satellite images expose China's secretive nuclear submarine force. You know, the nuclear subs that we have that ply the ocean's depth, right? When they're not running into seamounts, are probably the most lethal and ready force that we have to be able to respond to, you know, a China, a Russia, or any of these other countries that want to do us ill. And the fact that China continues to massively increase their naval capacity should be very concerning. Newly published satellite images shows the latest developments of Chinese naval base, which serves as a hub for China's nuclear-powered subfleet. Recent updated satellite imagery in China's Qingdao first submarine base on the eastern coast. The images revealed at least 6 submarines docked near a pier, with 1 additional submarine visible in a dry dock per Lux observations. The analysts observed that 5 of the nuclear-powered submarines captured in the imagery were equipped with conventional armaments. Yeah, so there's if you want to, there's a series of tweets that he has that have these images in them. So and there's several more detailed images that you can kind of flip through. They're all pretty interesting. So I think this is the dry dock, yeah. So this is a close up of a SSN. And then there's an SSBN on the third image. And then another SSN in the fourth image. And then you've got the dry dock here. Unidentified hull in dry dock could be a boat undergoing scrapping, giving maintenance as regularly as performed at Bohai. And then, so they've got this is a boomer here, which is a SSBN or a ballistic missile submarine, kind of like our Ohio class. Did we ever get I don't think we have a new version of the SSBN, do we?
No,
they haven't. Yeah, they haven't had a new. But I think the Columbia, is that supposed to be the replacement for the Ohio class? I think. Yeah.
Yeah.
But it's not. It hasn't sailed yet.
Let me point something out that another reason to have so many in dry dock at the same time or tied up alongside the pier at the same time, preparation for impending action.
Right. Like something may be going down, and so there's
let's swap out batteries. Let's get everything ready to rock, and then down.
Right. As China continues to expand its military might, the new chairman of the Joint Chief of Staff, Dan Kane, has sounded the alarm of the U.S.'s ability to confront China. The U.S. did not have the throughput, responsiveness, or agility needed to deter our adversaries, General Kane said. The U.S. military is bracing for a possible confrontation with China over the Taiwan Strait. And China is said to be building a novel type of amphibious vessel called the Sinkao, or the water bridges. I think we saw some examples of those a couple of weeks ago to bolster possible Taiwan invasion. So those were those kind of shipborne bridges. It's almost like they had like legs built into them that they could turn into basically docks, right? Mm-hmm. With the bridging connecting the shore to the actual dock boat. That seemed like a pretty interesting capability, and something that I don't think we have.
We can't build a pier.
Well, yeah, J-Lots doesn't work in choppy seas, evidently. Joe, you're my kind of naval go-to guy. What's your kind of take on the kind of, and not just the submarines, but the expansion of high-end kind of blue water Navy assets that they've been doing in recent years?
If you want to expand your territorial holdings and you want to enforce your 9 line or the newer 7 line, whatever, or 9- line or the newer 7- line, you need a blue water battery or blue water navy. I was reading somebody's tweet about batteries. You need a bigger navy. They're building amphibious ships at a much faster rate than any other kind of ship. So you ought to draw a conclusion from that. And about 4 years ago, they transferred 400,000 more troops from the People's Liberation Army to the People's Liberation Army Naval Infantry, or their Marines. Marines are an offensive tool, not a defensive tool. They're meant to seize and defend advanced naval bases. So why do I need to transfer 400,000 troops from my regular ground army to an amphibious organization? Well, if I want to start taking islands, I need a lot more amphibious Marines. The U.S. Marine Corps right now sits around, well, now it's probably down to about 90,000, but it generally sits around 113,000. During World War II, it was up around 300,000, and we had 6 Marine divisions. Yeah. So that's kind of the direction that China is going. When you add all of that together, the furious shipbuilding, the specific building of amphibs, and the specific transfer of personnel from the regular army to their Marine Corps, it tells you that China is about to go somewhere. And you have to ask yourself where that is. You don't need 500 and something thousand Marines to take Kinmen Island and Matsu, but you do to take Taiwan and parts of the Philippines and the Spratlys and all of the other islands that they claim.
Yeah, I mean, it's power projection. That's what they're looking to be able to do.
Exactly right. And that's why they've ramped up the production of aircraft carriers of their own, right? The ability to project power.
I love it when Tom Clancy comes roaring back to relevancy. Did in Red Storm Rising change all the batteries in the Novembers and kilos? I hate to say it, but why do you need naval doctrine when you could just read Tom Clancy? All right, guys. This is all. Any final thoughts on Chinese and things that they're doing in the world to spend their money?
Yes, in the words of one famous Hong Kong person whose name we still don't know, China is asshole. Do not trust China.
All right. So this, I start noticing like these stories that are shockingly kind of bellicose on the whole. And this isn't like, these are not the kind of, people who don't, this isn't like a fiery right-wing people who, or whatever. This is like, these are like the neocon warmongers is kind of like the way I read all this stuff. So I want to just kind of lay out some of their cases for why we should be doing this. And then we will talk about, why we shouldn't do this. I mean, I am kind of a mixed opinion of this. But hey, real quick. I want to get these Pinochet helicopter tour rumble rants in here. For $5, Pinochet's helicopter says, MA just announced a huge infrastructure program for the state, from the center of the state west. It's all rural forest area where I am. Where can I look to see if contractors have CCP ties? I don't know. I don't know. That's a good question. Let's see again. Another one.
So the easy thing there to do is start with the basic tools, man. If you have access to X, go to Grok, type in the company, ask it to run you down sources for who owns the company, who's invested in them, all that kind of stuff. Sometimes you run into brick walls, and if it's not a publicly held company, you run into some brick walls. But sometimes that information's out there because of other things.
Yeah, you can also just check the research mode when you do exactly what he just said, and it'll dig deeper into some of the more publicly accessible stuff. He says, to piggyback off my last rant, oddly, when the communist government announced that she stated the infrastructure is not federally funded, MA is broke and has problems, same kind as California. Can the CCP finance a state? No, but it can build private roads and then hold, and then put tolls on them.
Look, let's talk about an important portion of that last article that we just read. They were talking about China trying to take over. I don't remember the exact wording that they used, but they said sub-governments, and what they mean by that is basically like
subnational government.
Yeah, basically as local as city, but as high as stuff like I would say like the largest entities they're addressing are probably like whole tribes, because they are definitely addressing the tribes who hold land in the U.S. independent from us. But state governments are certainly on that list.
And city and municipal governments as well. In April 2025, all right, moving back to the cross-border drone strikes against Mexican drug cartels. Assistant Secretary of State for Special Operations Colby Jenkins testified that the U.S. forces did not have legal authority to conduct cross-border drone strikes cartels. Yeah, no shit.
Like that's ever stopped them.
Well, right. That's kind of like, okay, that you're kind of stating the obvious, but at the same time, yes, you are correct. Guys, I want to, just before we kind of dive into this, pro or con on cross-border operations into Mexico, generally speaking. I'll go to you first, Pete. What do you think?
I mean, it should have been the war that we fought instead of G1. Like, in my opinion, like what we poured into and the resources, the personnel, the equipment, that is what we should have been focusing on. To do it now is it's literally suicide. We don't have the people, we don't have the personnel, we don't have the national will, and the ability for the cartels to reach into the states is much more sophisticated than anything that the Taliban or Al Qaeda could ever do.
Yeah, I think those are all good points, Joe.
I think that, as I've pointed out repeatedly, that the strike back capability of Venezuela is not going to be targeted at the military. It's going to be targeted at civilians. It's going to be targeted at shopping malls, all kinds of events, sporting events, things like that. And we need to be prepared for that. Again, I'm not saying the fight doesn't need to be made. I'm just saying we need to be prepared for that.
Yeah. Did you mean the cartel or Mexico vice Venezuela? You said Venezuela at the beginning.
I was thinking of Tren de Aragua. But
yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Is there really a difference between the cartels and Venezuela?
No. I just wanted to make sure that that's what you meant, because I'm honestly, I don't know that we'll get to Venezuela yet, right? So in general, I am pro this idea. The problem is all the things that you guys mentioned are absolutely true. Both from our ability to do things, the public will. That being said, it's like, if we're gonna get into a fight anywhere in the world, this is the fight that we have the right to, and the reason to do it. I'll be honest with you. I think the smart way to fight this would be to fight it through the Mexican government. That being said, that's a challenge all on its own, right? And you get what you pay for down there. So this is an article. So this is the what is this? This is which one? This is the Articles of War. This is the Lieber Institute out of West Point, and basically what they're doing is kind of articulating, how this would go, what the doctrine of the motivation would be. So it also kind of talks the legal and strategic considerations. So some of the key points here is that, the Trump administration is considering going after the Mexican cartels because of fentanyl. It's like the things that the Mexican cartels are doing now are things that they weren't doing in the past. Like, 8 years ago, the number one thing that they were smuggling into America, I believe, was like avocados, because the price of avocados was just so high, they could steal them and ship them into the U.S. like illegally. But now it's fentanyl. Now it's human trafficking. I mean, it's like there's all these kind of reasons why it's different now. I mean, we're losing almost 100,000 people every year because of fentanyl. If Al Qaeda was killing 100,000 Americans every year, we would literally scour whatever country they were in to the foundation in order to find them. Current operations. So, the U.S. has increased its surveillance capability to include CIA MQ-9 Reapers flying covert missions over Mexico. So actual missions are inside Mexico at this point to gather intel on the cartel activities, locate, find the networks, establish patterns of life. This is basically targeting 101 from what we did back during the GWAT. So there's a legal debate. Basically, the author of this article argues that the strikes could be legally justified under international law as self-defense, as the cartels pose an imminent threat to U.S. citizens and U.S. interests. This is Article 51 under the UN Charter kind of territory, so this shouldn't be a big surprise. That, by the way, that's the article that allows self-defense. So the conditions for legal strike, we would have to show a necessity, and Mexico's cooperation or failure to control these cartels would just support that case. So some of the challenges, guys. Tell me which one you guys think is the biggest challenge, because I think these are all like things that we have to overcome. The first was Mexican sovereignty. How would we feel if somebody tried to do something like this into our country? Now, that being said, Joe, what part of Mexico does the Mexican government control?
Like Mexico City Federal District, and that's it.
Right. I mean, so when you cede your sovereignty to criminal cartels, that kind of undermines this entire argument. It's not a good argument. Cartel retaliation. Now, as we have articulated, this is actually the most significant kind of downside, I think, of potential to the U.S. government. And then, of course, there's the effectiveness, right? And so how effective can we be, with just drones? Maybe if we use like a JSOC or some sort of, maybe multi-agency law enforcement task force. I mean, these are the kind of things that you have to kind of drill down into. So, Pete, let me ask you this. I mean, you kind of have the intel background.
Yeah.
Where do you think this fight is right now? If let's assume it's going to happen. Where do you think this is right now? Are we still kind of building the picture?
Yeah, we're still, prepping the battlefield, still doing the IPOE, all that. You're trying to find any type of, essentially, Sicario, right?
Yeah.
Rather than fight them, you try to get them to fight each other to a certain extent. And you want them to weaken themselves to a point where you can come in and force your will on a much weaker organization. The problem is, and I think I sent you a couple of posts that I made, a couple of years ago about the fact that it is well known that a lot of these organizations have outposts in major U.S. cities. And what you have is the interstate system where they can quickly move from point A to point B and move drugs, men and materials, and so forth. The amount of drugs and weapons that is moved on I-85 between Atlanta and Charlotte is just astronomical.
Yeah, that's you linked those tweets that you did back in 2023. They're in the private chat. Do you want to share one real quick? It's basically a tweet thread, and there's some pretty good stuff in here. Let's see. Yeah, Pete, you want to kind of talk us through some of this stuff?
So I think this was when Venezuela was about to invade its neighbor and so forth, and talked about how horrible idea it was because of terrain, blah blah blah, but also the fact that Hezbollah and Venezuela have a long and storied history, so you have that angle. But also, a lot of the narco terrorists have used the techniques that would honestly put the Taliban to the shame when it comes to trying to terror, just pure and utter terror. And a lot of these organizations are on the border. They have outposts in each major U.S. state or city, and some smaller ones. And the fact that the interstate system is used as just like we would, and the reason that it was built was to move men and material for military purposes from one coast to the other, and that's what they're doing.
Yeah, I mean, so they've got this rat line all through the U.S., and essentially, one of the things that Joe's been really kind of pointing out to everybody for a long time is that they've infiltrated and put these cadres of people in every city, and some of them are just gangbangers, but there's also some pretty sophisticated people that are involved in this. Joe, kind of how do you see the network, kind of crystallizing within the U.S. And what would there need to be a simultaneous law enforcement, like federal law enforcement press within the U.S. against these, kind of at the same time that we're doing whatever it is we do in Mexico?
Well, there would have to be. Famously, right after we made the decision to invade Afghanistan, American law enforcement actually went into a crisis mode for the first 90 days. And a lot of police departments had officers living in the station and all of that because they were afraid of this type of thing, right? Asymmetric attacks at shopping malls all across the country. I think we would have to do that again. We'd have to do something like that. And let me expand on what Pete has here. Each of these corridors is protected by a different gang whose job is to be sort of a security contractor. So in the east, you have MS-13. In the center, you have Tren de Aragua. And over on the west coast, you have MA-18, or the Mexican Mafia, that covers all of that. One of those two different groups. Yeah. And so it's all been divided up. It's very well organized. And those would be the individual groups that you have to deal with. Interestingly, we had 160,000 rounds of .308, not .38, that reporters can't type. It was .308 ammo and 7.62 by 39 ammo, intercepted on a road from Utah to Colorado. And when I raise this interesting point, everyone says, oh, no, that stuff was on its way to Mexico. Well, going from Utah into Colorado is not on the way to Mexico in any way, shape, or form. It's on its way somewhere else. But not Mexico. So
yeah, great point. Fred, you gonna want to say anything else on that?
What? I'm sorry.
You got anything to add to what Joe just said?
I just think that this is the war that we should have fought. We are actually in the process of probably shrinking the U.S. Army by 90,000 troops. And so who's going to do the fighting? Who's going to hold the terrain, right?
Yeah. Well, so that's kind of interesting. It's like, at what level of internal security would Americans be willing to accept?
Yeah. And
that's the kind of...
this is what I was going to bring up. So, yes, you brought about the threat of attacks after 9/11, any type of large gathering, blah, blah, blah. But yet it never happened. And that is something that has always nagged me in the back of my mind. Why did that never happen?
What do you mean?
Why didn't Al Qaeda, any type of terrorist organization, go after very soft targets, even years after we started to kind of drop our guard, right?
Quite frankly, they didn't have enough infrastructure here to make it happen. They do now. They didn't then. They spent everything they had on 9/11.
That's true.
So,
yeah, I mean, the interesting thing is they don't have a lot of capacity in those organizations, specifically the like Al Qaeda just didn't have a lot of capacity.
Yeah.
Now you've got like onesies and twosies, but it's one of those kind of things. You don't know if you can trust them, right? You don't know how far you can push them as far as to be able to conduct some sort of, and then I mean even like operations like Beslan when that occurred. I mean that was pretty audacious. And it happened just next door to Chechnya, right?
Ooh, yeah.
And so these, this wasn't some operation that happened on the other side of the world. I mean, it literally happened like the next state over, and they were able to leverage their support channels that they had within Chechnya and Dagestan and some of these other surrounding areas. So,
do you know where Dagestan is by chance? I'm just wondering.
Yeah, it's right next to Chechnya.
Because there's some people who don't know where it is.
Well, it's in that whole Caucasus region. There's like what is there? There's 4 like emirates. I can't remember I haven't looked at those maps in a long time, honestly.
I was making a reference to a certain person.
Yeah. Yeah, right. I forgot about that. Good, that's a deep cut. All right, let's move on to the next one. So this is another one from the Atlantic Council, another bastion of peaceniks and people who really agree with
protecting our democracy.
That's right. So basically, what this is this how the U.S. military action against the drug cartels in Mexico could unfold. So basically, they're laying out the war plan kind of in their point of view, and how Trump it could potentially create this action. So he's basically lay out that he started off with putting them as FTOs, which is a foreign terrorist organization, and Pete that FTO designation is pretty important as far as like actually getting the assets like the CIA and the military intelligence kind of stuff to begin tasking against them. Obviously this concerns U.S.-Mexico ties. The Mexican government would be very much against us in entering their sovereign territory, quote unquote. But it looks like they would also focus on the Sinaloa cartel, which is what the article kind of brings up. And so is possible for a military plan. So the article sketches out a 4-part strategy that plan using special operations forces, drone strikes, targeting cartel leaders and finances, similar to anti-ISIS operations. The details are vague, but the build on the recent U.S.-Mexico deals and counterterrorism experience. The CIA drones and U.S. special operations are already active. So it makes me wonder what kind of special operations kind of things that we've got going on inside of Mexico.
The frequency of car accidents among cartel members since this came out. Right.
Well, Joe, the other part of it is that I would be interested to find out if some of our guys over there don't find themselves under a microscope of a different kind. Because the cartel has done a good job of infiltrating both federal law enforcement and the military over there. So, our guys have got to be fucking watching their backs the same way we did in Afghanistan. So the cartel response, right? So strengths and weaknesses. Cartels have weapons like rifles and drones, but no real army. They rely on ambushes and terror tactics. As businesses, they may negotiate or shift operations under pressure. There is retaliatory risks. Unlike terrorist organizations like Al Qaeda and the Taliban, they have active cell structure within the U.S. They could strike back within the U.S. using their network, targeting cops and civilians. Their cyber skills and gang ties add danger. The irony is we talk about like going after like a drone operator's family, right? I think that's way too sophisticated for the Mexican cartel. They would just kill a cop, or kill a cop's family, or kill a random family and then they would say we did this because you drone striked, someplace. And it would be a way. I think the random nature of that kind of would actually be more terrifying to the U.S. populace.
Maybe just because it's burned into my psyche for reasons, but the image of 4 Blackwater contractors hanging from a bridge comes to mind.
Yep.
Yeah. That's exactly the kind of thing that the Mexican cartels would do. That's exactly,
they do it now in Mexico. They would do it here.
Exactly right. Exactly right. So
everyone believes their local police department will protect them and save them from this stuff. When 4 Denver cops are hanging from a bridge on I-15, it's a little bit different, right?
100%.
I don't know if I-15 goes through Denver. I'm just making it up. 25 does. 25. Let's go with that.
So what are some of the U.S. risks? Cartel attacks in the U.S., especially with Chinese or gang support. So that was a thing that I was surprised that they mentioned in this Atlantic Council article, is talking about the potential for Chinese support to the cartels in reaching out to targets within the U.S. Let's see. Unilateral U.S. action could anger Mexico, harming trade ties. I think if you're going in kinetically against cartels, I think the last thing you're worried about is trade ties. What's Mexico's role? Corruption in Mexico and its laws against the foreign intervention complicate cooperation, of course. The Mexican president wants to fight crime but faces limits. Militarized drug wars like Mexico's in 2006 often increase violence and splinter cartels without stopping the drugs. And then what's the China angle? Cartels' Chinese ties make them a U.S.-China issue, but military action may not solve it. That's interesting because that might actually be the thing that brings that ratchets up the pressure to the point where China stops that. But you'll never know if you don't do it. Let's see. Some experts they doubt military action would work, favoring training for Mexican forces instead. Cartels are tough. The U.S. involvement could drag on. Public in a 2023 poll showed 52% of Americans back military action, but less if Mexico objects. So kind of like the takeaway of this whole article is the U.S. is gearing up for a possible fight against cartels like terrorists, with Mexico's cautious help, but military action could backfire, increasing violence and straining relations. A joint approach to tackling corruption and drug demand might work better, but it's tough to pull off. I thought this was interesting that, there were some things in here that kind of surprised me, if I'm honest. And it wasn't as warmongering as I expected it to be. That being said, it absolutely, seem to support, generally speaking, these actions. Guys, just Peter, for you first, we'll go around the horn. What's your kind of take on this?
I think it is prepping the population for action in Mexico, and I think it is like conditioning the populace for something.
Yeah,
if that makes sense.
Yeah, 100%. I totally agree with that, Joe.
Yeah, same thing. We all know that this fight is coming. I just think that most of us don't understand what that means for us in our daily lives, and we need to be more prepped for that. We need to be thinking about where we go and what we do, and maybe doing a little bit of an area study on that, and knowing our true risk level, knowing who the players are in your area. So I would just up my preps for that. It's going to happen one way or the other because the military-industrial complex needs an active combat situation somewhere. This was closer to home, less supply costs. So,
Joe, one of the things that I know you've said in the past is you've advocated for a buffer zone.
Yes.
This next article actually has a picture in it where the problem with the buffer zone, I don't disagree with you, but the problem with that comes in with this picture. Just scroll down just a little bit there, watcher. So in Mexico, if you have never spent any time on the border, the Mexicans build right up against the border wall. I mean, literally right up to the border wall. And so it would be really tough. That's probably the most densely populated area in northern Mexico is right along the border. And so that buffer zone would be tough to achieve with the level
It's
of
almost
population.
like entire industries have been built and entire communities have been built on cross-border smuggling.
Well, the thing that really surprised me, Joe, when I lived in El Paso, was just the sheer number of people who worked and went to school and did daily business inside America, but lived over in Juarez. Like for instance, my kid's piano teacher, she worked at a music place, but she lived in Juarez, right? So she drove back and forth every day. At my daughter's schools, they had a school bus that picked up kids at the walk across bridge along the border. And those kids got on the bus onto an El Paso district school bus and then rode the bus to school, which I found to be fucking hilarious. So these are kids living in Mexico, but going to school in the U.S. So there's just all kinds of these weird daily interactions across the border that, I mean, I won't say that I was ignorant of, but it's like you don't think about them until you see them every day, and so it's an interesting dichotomy.
So
anyway,
so town just like this, Mexicali, it's the capital of Baja California.
Yeah.
But it's almost all Chinese, and it's right on the border. Interesting.
Yeah, 100%. 100%. Mexicali, is that the one that's inland from Tijuana, right?
Correct.
Yeah. That's where the airport is on the far side of, yeah. Defund the cartels, a smart plan for the border. So this article this is an op-ed, of course. So I just thought I should put that out there. So basically, she says America needs labor. That's not for debate, but we've raised a few generations of kids who are not equipped for hard, uncomfortable work, especially those who came of age during the pandemic. I've had over 350 employees at any one time in my business, and I've watched the workforce shift dramatically in just 10 years. At the same time, I believe the border wall is not racist. Congratulations. A wall like a fence or a locked front door doesn't carry moral weight. Strong borders make good neighbors, but let's be honest, the southern border is already secured, not just by us. It's secured by the Mexican cartels. Now, this is where I thought she was kind of onto something. Every person crossing is paying $10,000 to $13,000 to make that journey, not including the pre-planned robbery that happens nearly every person along the way, and sometimes additional financial extortion afterwards. We're not just turning a blind eye to this, we're funding it. Our labor shortage, our need for labor is creating a massive revenue source for the cartels. Many commentators scream, come legally, but the reality is there are no viable legal pathways for Mexicans to do so.
Okay.
Sorry
about your bad luck.
Right. The problem here is that she thinks that Mexicans should get some sort of preferential treatment over people of other countries.
Who knows
well, stop, because they get it. That is the part of this that is the most agonizing to have to read, is that there is a special program and they do get it. The issue is that's only for migratory labor that they have to agree that they're going to leave at the end of the season. And that's not what these people want.
There's also, you have to always look at these things the other way around. How easy is it for an American to become a naturalized citizen in Mexico? Not very easy. You can go there and visit all you want. They want your money. You can even own land there, but you don't get citizenship there.
Right. I mean, so here's the thing. If you live along the Mexican border with the U.S., you can come in legally unless you have some sort of bar to entry. Yeah. Because like I said, people do it every day. And let's be honest, people who live in Tijuana or Juarez or something like that, a lot of times they can have a really nice house in Juarez and then work in America, but they'll go back to Juarez every night.
And live like
that's where they want to live.
Juarez. Yeah.
That's exactly right. Because
I'll just say, as a young lad, I was known to go back and forth between Tijuana and North Island Naval Air all the time. So the bridge, like you come back from what is it, Revolution Street or whatever, Yes.
Yes, that was something that I did in the late 90s as well. So I mean, you know, so these. Anyway, let me get back to the. So yes, America is a melting pot. We welcome the tired, the poor, but no, we cannot take anymore. It's not sustainable, and pretending otherwise perpetuates suffering. Let's create a 10-year low-skill work visa. It would cost $10,000, money that currently goes to cartels. Workers would be permitted to come and go, visit family, live with dignity. Employment would be mandatory. Workers could not remain unemployed longer than 3 months. Applicants must have no criminal history. The visa would never lead to U.S. citizenship, even through marriage. The best case would be a green card, but not a vote. Workers would pay taxes and contribute $10 per paycheck to Social Security, which they would never draw from. After 10 years, the visa could not be renewed, or could be renewed once, or the worker could return home. We would prioritize Mexico, Guatemala, El Salvador, Honduras, because the strong neighbor is national security. If your neighbor's house is burning down, your own home is at risk. Guys, what do you think about that idea?
Having the Mexicans leave Mexico and work here does not leave you with a strong neighbor. I'm sorry, but that's just not the case.
Yeah, you end up having like a brain drain or something along those lines.
Yeah.
Now, I mean, Watcher, you were talking probably about like the H2 visa program, the temporary agricultural work, and that's
it's almost as if my community is fully flooded with those people twice a year, to the point where like public services can't keep up, and that was before the invasion.
But you know, like those workers, like you have to provide them free housing. You have to. Yep. There's like all kinds of things that the employer has to do. But like you said, it lasts for a limited period of time, and then they have to go back. Mm-hmm. And so, anyway, so that is one of those.
Look, and let's be clear. And why is that not enough? Because those are the labor positions this person's talking about. Why is that not enough for the libertarians that want to do this?
Well, you know, the interesting thing for me is that I think the problem with these kind are short term, and because they're short term, these guys have no kind of, they don't have any kind of reason to think better of the country, right? They go in, they get their money, and they're out.
Well, why would they have any reason to think better of the country in this case? Like this.
Well, if you're going to live
I understand the argument.
10 years. I mean, I don't buy her thing per se. I'm just devil's advocate for it. I'm just saying that having something that's a little more I don't know, long term. You might cultivate a better worker.
I think that the elites on both sides will do anything they can to create a permanent non-voting or voting underclass. Mm-hmm. I think that's really the only argument between the elites on both sides is how can we undercut the American worker the fastest, and do we use them for political voting or do we not use them for political voting? That's really the only debate.
Do you guys think we have enough American workers to do all the work in America? Honest question. I don't think we do, but
that is I think that is an interesting question. If you, like I said, we have enough as far as we have visa programs that address most of the labor shortfalls that we're talking about in the first place. Do we have qualified Americans? No, I think a large part of that is because a lot of the pathway to qualification have been taken up by us, shall we say, generously educating the rest of the world. And hey, it just turns out that while you're here, part of your education program, you're going to get an internship. And hey, what does that internship lead to? Right, because that's the pathway to these higher qualified careers.
Well, but I'm talking about like the dirty, dull,
right. And I'm saying we already have visa programs to address that kind of stuff. It's just you can't keep them here as a permanent.
I guess my question is, do you think those visa programs are effective then?
when we force people to abide by them, yes. When you just let people not abide by them and come in and do whatever the hell they want because that's literally been the alternative, then no. Why would someone sign up for a known short-term program when they can literally just cross the border whenever the fuck they want?
Joe, what do you think?
I think that we've had enough border nonsense in the last, I don't know, 2 decades that maybe we should just stop with the border, put everything on hold for about 10 years, then see what we can do after that.
Moratorium.
Yeah, absolute moratorium.
I agree. And Scott, to go back to your point, I also think that people will say that we have a shortage. Well, I can't remember where I saw this, but I saw the statistic, but the vast majority of like new construction, like all these jobs go to support the new recent immigrants.
But just gonna say, it's one of those questions where, like, do we have enough jobs to fill the people in America? Well, that depends. Can we get rid of all the people that we're forcing all these new jobs on? Like, it's like the NHS, like the British debate. Oh, we can't survive without immigrants in the NHS. Well, what would be the impact on the NHS if you didn't have to support the millions and millions of immigrants?
Correct.
Would the numbers of required healthcare workers go down substantially? I submit that they would.
That's a great example of that. You know, one of the issues I really see here is we don't know if we have enough workers. Honestly, we don't. And you know, like it's when I appreciate Pinochet's $2 Rumble rant over here. Where he says, do we have enough? Scott, there's 2 million federal bureaucrats who just got fired, and they're perfectly capable of picking our food. Now, I got it. I totally agree. But 90% of those workers would never deign to do anything under about $25 an hour. Not because they're incapable of doing it. It's because they would rather choose not to work and leech off of society in whatever way they.
There is the issue. There is the issue, right? Would never deign to. Let's think about every period of mass unemployment we've had in the past. There is no could never deign to. Let's think about the Great Depression. Oh no, I'm a writer that got laid off of my paper job because a paper went under. Do I have the option to never deign to not go take any other fucking job I can? No, you're literally going to be out searching the rails trying to find a job anywhere. Okay?
Well, but that's not the economy.
The social safety net is the problem.
Yeah, that's not the but that's not the we're not living in a Great Depression right now. I know we're not living in the best economy we've seen in the last 25 years. But that being said, we're not living in the Great Depression either. You know, so I mean, I guess the problem is not so much.
You know what?
That,
the other half of this.
Hold on. Let me just make my point, and then I'll turn it over to you guys. It's not the social safety net that I'm working on. It's the families that take in their freeloading 28-year-old son and then just let him live in the basement. And dad makes, $120K a year, so he can leech off of them for indefinitely, probably.
Well, first of all, 120K is the new 30,000. So 120K is not doing well in America anymore, right? Anyway, but what I want to point out is it's ironic, Scott, and I'm not trying to beat up on you here, but I'm going to throw this out here. It's ironic hearing you complain about labor numbers, yet you are a huge fan of automation of everything that can be automated.
Amen, brother. Because
why are we talking about dragging in people when we're on the precipice of talking about mass unemployment and talking about universal basic income becoming a necessity because no one's going to have jobs to work?
So I don't agree with any of that. But what I did say to kind of kick this off is I don't know if we have enough workers or not. I don't know what the answer is, right? I'm not saying we have enough or we don't have enough. What I'm saying is I don't think we understand the labor market right now because we've done so much to fuck it up that. And I am not a absolute moratorium on any kind of immigration. But I am a near absolute moratorium on a lot of integration. And I don't know if I would go 10 years. I may look at something more like 2 or 3 years, because the idea is you got to flush out the market to figure out, who we need and who we don't need. And so it's kind of like you got to kind of shock the system in order to learn what the problem really is. And yes, I do believe that a lot of these dangerous, dull, and jobs can be handled through automation. Go ahead, Walter.
Maybe this is naive, but did we not a long time ago, I feel like probably the 90s, did we not pass a law that says that in order to employ someone, you have to check that they are legally allowed to be employable?
Yeah, what was that called? That was some kind of ID verification.
I'm just saying,
it was some kind of a.
Can we not even take an approach enforce the laws already on the books approach?
On the books, yeah. I mean, so this is exactly the same argument we make about gun control a lot of times. It's like we don't need new gun control. We just need to look at the laws on the books. Pete, what's your kind of thoughts on this?
I always bring up the Hart-Celler Act, right? And how it changed the immigration patterns in the United States. And I was just kind of looking, and labor shortage or a possible labor shortage was not a reason used to pass a Hart-Celler Act. And so I think a lot of this is like they're using almost fear to kind of drive an emotional response that, oh, you have all this suffering in the world, your immigration policy is racist, and that you need to make America look more like the United States. And I don't believe in, again, it goes, how can you determine if you have a labor shortage, like you said, if we fucked it up so much?
Yeah. Well, so just a little background. I mean, you drop a heavy word like Hart-Celler Act or something like that. It's basically it ended the quotas in the 1920s.
Yes. So the Hart-Celler Act was passed in 1965. Actually, to be honest, it was lubed through Congress by the blood of JFK.
Right.
And because of his book, The Nation of Immigrants. And it was specifically said by many, especially those who passed it in LBJ, that it would not in any way, shape, or form change the balance of demographics in the United States.
Well, naively, of course.
Yes. Well, I mean, no, they lied. They point blank lied. They knew.
Yeah, I was gonna say it's like how somehow strangely the Protect Orphaned Puppies Act seems to always feed orphan puppies into meat grinders. It's this really weird phenomenon.
Yeah. So the argument there is to bring back quotas, right, for the locations
or something else.
Yeah. So I think there's something to be said for the idea of using not preferencing people who live right next door to us, right? Just because poor people in Mexico have the ability to sneak into America doesn't mean they should be able to get jobs. There should be, I don't know if it's a population density type of thing, as a percentage of global population, what is your, I don't know if that's the right answer, but I know what you're saying. Yeah, right. Somebody who might have a culture that's more compatible. You get extra points if you're a Christian nation or if you're a Western European nation or you have a democratic system versus a totalitarian system. If you are an active opponent or enemy of the United States, you don't get any. Things like that.
Well, I guess what I'm saying is I would even take a Australian style immigration system.
All right, educate us there. I don't know what that is.
They're very much more about skills over quantity, and they are extremely stringent. Like if you were caught illegally entering the country, you are put into a area where they concentrate you, and then you are sent out of the nation.
Well, in fairness, the whole Hart-Celler Act, preference skills and family reunification over, the national quotas that they had before from the 1920s. So, I mean, once again, this is generally not my area, but I don't disagree that we don't need something. I used to be a simple man, and I used to just say simply, we need to make it as hard as shit to get in here illegally, or near impossible, and we need to make it a lot easier to come in legally, so that we know who the fuck is here. And then we got to be total Nazis about people who come here illegally.
My thing is the U.S. populace was lied in regards to what the Hart-Cedarno Act would do, and every single election, every single whatever opinion poll, it people always want less immigration, to less, like they want more skilled, less.
It's an 80-20 issue.
Yes, but it is never done.
Yeah. And then also we also established that churches built in the 1970s are fucking ugly. So I feel like we've made a lot of ground on this episode of the Council on Future Conflicts. Peter, thanks for joining us, man. It's always nice to have a different voice.
Hopefully I can do a little bit more, since my availability is kind of a little all over the place at the moment. Yeah,
no, it's as often as you can. We appreciate it. Joe, Watcher, Peter, thank you guys for being here. Thank you for. That's all I got for today. Let's go around the horn.
Last $2 one, real quick.
Did I? Oh, yeah. Peter says helicopter for $2 says, would increasing the amount of biometrics collected by those who want to come here help deter migrant labor or scare them with privacy invasion?
No, because those people don't care. I have no record in America. There's nothing. I really don't care, and we don't want to trample the Constitution in our attempt to keep others out. We can stay within the lines and just keep them out.
Well, yeah, I don't think there's anything wrong with collecting biometric data on people who want to come into this country. I mean, we kind of already do with the
the new passports. It doesn't scare them.
Oh, yeah. It doesn't scare them. That's right. All right. Guys, let's go around the horn. Looking in, we got a lot going on this week, and the Pope. That's kind of that'll impact the rest of the week. It'll be interesting to see what people say. Joe, what's your take on the week?
My take on the week is this. Over on Locals last night, I put out a thing about this Command 11 and this new S9 intel that's trying to make it look like it's either Forward Observer Intel or S2 Underground. All of these different companies popped up around the same time about 2 months ago, and they've all been saying the same thing. One, I believe they're all fake and they don't exist, because they said dumb stuff last night like, oh, we were on our way back from a hostile territory with a strike team, so we didn't see this. They're setting you up for something. If there are this many fake companies that popped up and they're all saying the same thing, that's someone who's trying to set a narrative, and you need to wonder why. So maybe keep your head on a swivel and pay attention.
So wait, what? Can you explain that a little bit, the situation a little bit more?
I'm sorry.
I'm sorry. Could you explain that situation about where you're talking about what happened?
Okay. Well, if you've been on Twitter at all in the last 2 months,
I haven't. I really haven't. I'm sorry. Like I've kind of disconnected. Sorry.
I'll get on it if you just give me a second. Command 11 is they claim to be some sort of a private intelligence agency that no one in the private intelligence business has ever heard of. And they popped up about 2 months ago talking about all these planned terror attacks that they're trying to get the government to listen to them on. First of all, that's not how private intelligence works. Most of those private intelligence contractors work for the federal government and are generally not just out gathering intel and providing it. That's not how that actually works, right? There are OSINT companies, but that's not what these guys are claiming to be. They're claiming to be some sort of super secret special ops group going around the world. But they're talking about all these different potentials for hospital attacks and things like that. One, it's just raising the fear factor and making people do silly things. So that might even be the goal. But the other thing is that if I was a devious deep state and I wanted to create the narrative that something was done by someone else that I was about to do, I'd probably do it the same way. Right? Okay. I'd get the threat out there. I wouldn't tie my name to it, but I'd make some fake company to get the threat out there, conduct the attack, and then say, see, everyone knew this was going to happen. So I'm just warning people that fake intelligence companies exist, and ask yourself why they're out there.
Interesting. Yeah, I'd never heard of those guys either. So,
well, go search Command 11, and you'll see a whole series of nonsense tweets.
All right, P. What do you got looking at the week?
Well, actually, I have to. I'm in the process of looking for a new truck since my truck got totaled, and so that is going to be my
Jesus.
week, the personal. Yeah, that's kind of my big thing, and honestly, just kind of catching up on the news. Like I said, I just disassociated. I was so busy, just didn't open up. Actually, I deleted Twitter from my phone just because I didn't have time to look at it, and yeah, just kind of get back into the groove of kind of just understanding what's going on in the world. Mainly because also I let go of it because I didn't have to worry about it since I'm no longer in the army. So
Yeah.
so, but hey, I still have access to the army SharePoint. So
Do you really?
yeah, they haven't cut me off yet.
That's ironic.
I
Okay.
wouldn't necessarily announce that. But hey,
Yeah, what are they gonna do to me? Fire me?
Yeah, right. Watcher, what about you? Looking at the week.
Yeah, wasn't this the week of the big leftist action, Joe? If I'm remembering correctly, wasn't this the week that they had their big we're going to plan a bunch of protests to remove Donald Trump action that the Antifa network was planning? It kind of fizzled.
it was supposed to be Saturday, and now it's going to be May Day. They keep changing
Gotcha.
so.
Well, they're going to be really disappointed when Trump doesn't just absolutely destroy them, and take over the country later this afternoon. So I feel bad for him.
That's the blue and
Inshallah.
Yeah, inshallah.
Yeah. I don't know. Just keep your eyes out. I think the leftists are going to start feeling more and more unhinged as time goes on.
Yeah. I think you're right. I think the left is like literally breaking their own brains, especially when you see things like Charlie Kirk going on the Bill Maher show and those guys agreeing with each other more than a leftist would with Bill Maher at this point. So they're pretty fucking unhinged. The leader of the party is David Hogg, and you've got it's the party of Hakeem Jeffries, AOC, and Rashida Tlaib. So this is the party that they have, and they're gonna ride or die with it. So I look forward to their next move. Gentlemen, that's all I got. Thank you for being here, Council. Chat, you guys were crushing it as always. Thank you guys very much. Some very generous gifts that you gave to us in there. We will be back on Wednesday as always. Thank you very much. If you haven't done it already, subscribe to the channel, like the video, hit the bell for notifications, and definitely tell your buddies out there about what we're doing over here at CFC. We're trying to grow, but it's if you look at the number, Joe, on the StreamYards, we're definitely doing well. Let's see, we've got over 1,300 on X, and we're doing reasonably well both on YouTube and Rumble. So I'll take it. Whatever. I'm good with it. So thank you guys for being here, and as always, stay safe.